She slept with a coworker behind his back, then laughed and said, "What if the baby isn't yours?" But when he quietly took a DNA test, the world she built started to fall apart. Want to know who that baby really belongs to and what happened after that cruel little joke? It was a Saturday night, just like any other. In a small suburban apartment, the warm kitchen light spilled across the white brick wall. The smell of grilled meat still lingered in the air, and the dinner plates, still warm, sat neatly in the dishwasher. Ivy Lane was cradling her newborn baby, sitting next to the man she called the love of her life, Alex. The two were curled up on their old couch, eyes locked on the TV screen where a paternity test show was playing. On screen, a woman was covering her face, sobbing uncontrollably, while a man shouted with joy, "I told you, I'm not the father." The audience in the studio erupted into claps and screams, and the host stood in the middle, nodding like he'd seen 100 emotional train wrecks just like this one. Alex chuckled softly and shook his head. God, these people are more dramatic than daytime TV. Ivy laughed too, but then, like a thought suddenly swept her away, she tilted her head, held the baby a little tighter and said, "What if you're not the father?" Alex whipped his head around. Half a smile still hung on his lips, frozen in place. "What?" he said, trying to laugh it off, searching her eyes for some playful spark. "I'm just joking," Ivy replied, her lips curling into a smile, but it lasted too long, stretched too tight, and came just a little too late to be harmless. A heavy silence dropped between them. The TV show kept blaring. Claps, crying, shouting, but in the living room, none of it registered anymore. Alex suddenly felt like he'd been knocked out of reality, floating in some kind of zero-gravity space where nothing felt certain. He forced a chuckle, nodded, and muttered, "Yeah, real funny." But his palms were starting to sweat. What Alex didn't know was that one little comment, passing by like a breeze, was the first crack that would bring down the entire world he was building. Just 6 months ago, Ivy had told him she was pregnant. Alex could still remember exactly how he felt when he heard the news. Shocked, anxious, but above all, happy. He'd always dreamed of having a family, a little home, a child who would call him Dad. Even though their wedding plans were on hold because of money, he still believed, finally, my little family is happening. They'd been together for 3 years. Their love story wasn't some fairy tale wrapped in roses. It was real, full of fights, makeups, breakups that lasted half a day, followed by tearful apologies and holding each other close again. But they kept going, because they chose each other. And for Alex, that was enough to keep building forward. And then Milo was born, a handsome little boy with bright blue eyes and silky black hair. From the very first moment he saw him, Alex loved that child with his whole heart. But today, when Ivy let those words slip, even though she insisted it was just a joke, something shifted inside Alex. It wasn't quite anger, not a clear sense of suspicion, but more like a tiny pinprick piercing through the thick layer of trust he had wrapped around her. And that pinprick, like a quiet warning of what was coming, started to spread. From that night on, Ivy's smile no longer brought Alex the comfort it used to. Every time she looked at the baby, held him, kissed his forehead, Alex couldn't stop himself from wondering, was there the slightest trace of guilt in her eyes? Their story, which seemed to begin as a peaceful little family, was about to open a different door, one that was darker, colder, and it all started with a joke. At the time, Alex still believed it was nothing more than a harmless throwaway line. But what he didn't realize was that the moment Ivy Lane said those words, a crack had formed, silent but stubborn. And before he knew it, his entire world would start to tilt. Alex was 30, a civil engineer, calm by nature, principled, but deeply caring. He was the kind of man who always put family before work, even if the job sometimes kept him out on construction sites late into the night. Ivy Lane, on the other hand, was 28, a freelance designer in every sense of the word, free. She had bright eyes, a smile that could disarm anyone, and an artistic soul that often wrestled with itself. They met at a community development seminar. Alex was there because his company made him go, and Ivy had walked into the wrong room. A quick chat, a few charming jokes, and just like that, it began. Their love lasted 3 years. 3 years of countless simple dinners, Arguments over forgotten towels left on the bed, and long stretches of financial struggle. There was a time when Ivy lost 2 major clients at once, and Alex's paycheck was delayed for an entire quarter. They used to sit huddled together in their tiny apartment, splitting instant noodles, scribbling down lists titled, "Things we'll do when we have money." But it was during those broke, uncertain days that their love felt the strongest. They once painted the empty room mint green, the color Ivy called the color of hope. Alex wrestled with a floating bookshelf he tried to mount, but ended up installing completely crooked, off by a full 3 centimeters. They laughed like kids, and in that moment, they both believed, we can build a family from nothing but these 2 hands. When Ivy said she was pregnant, it was right after a short trip to the beach, the same one where they'd had their first date. She stood there holding the pregnancy test, eyes brimming with tears. She didn't need to say a word. Alex saw her eyes and understood everything. He didn't jump up like in the movies. He didn't scream with joy. He just stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her gently, and whispered, "We're going to be parents." From that day on, everything in their little home started to change. Ultrasound pictures began appearing on the walls. Next to the fridge was a list of baby names scribbled in marker: Leo, Elliot, Jude, Kai. Alex liked Leo. Simple, strong, easy to say. Ivy leaned toward Jude. It sounded more artistic, she said. But in the end, they agreed. They'd decide once they saw the baby. They went baby shopping together, argued over cloth diapers versus disposable, debated whether or not to install a camera in the nursery. Alex started learning how to change diapers by watching YouTube videos, while Ivy created a pregnancy photo album, 1 bump photo every week. Little things, filled to the brim with happiness. And then, the day came. Ivy went into labor on a crisp morning in mid-October. Alex was so panicked he put his shirt on inside out, but still managed to get her to the hospital in under 10 minutes. When the baby's first cry rang out, it took his breath away. And in the moment the doctor placed that tiny newborn in his arms, Alex no longer felt like just an engineer or someone's partner. He felt like a father. Fully, completely. They named him Leo, just like Alex had hoped. A healthy little boy with chubby cheeks and jet black hair. When Ivy fell asleep after the long, exhausting labor, Alex sat alone in the hospital chair, cradling his son in his arms, whispering, "Hi, Leo. It's me, your dad." He cried. Not out of pain, but because for the first time in his life, he understood what unconditional love truly felt like. The day they came home, friends and family poured in like a celebration. Everyone wanted to hold Leo, kiss him, snap photos. Alex felt like he was floating. He took a small picture, Leo resting perfectly in his hands, and posted it with the caption, "I'm finally a dad." The first few weeks were a blur, busy, but full of joy. Every night, they took turns waking up to Leo's cries. Ivy held him, while Alex made bottles. He figured out how to soothe him with a soft whistle, and even wrote a short lullaby, just 4 lines, to sing to Leo every night. He never imagined he could love something so small, so deeply. In those rare quiet moments, the 2 of them would sit shoulder to shoulder on the couch, watching TV, while Leo slept peacefully between them. And in those moments, Alex truly believed, I have everything. But it was during a night just like that, the TV playing a paternity test show, Leo sleeping soundly in his bassinet, that Ivy turned to him, smiled, and said, "What if you're not the father?" And from that very moment, everything started to shift. Alex used to think nothing could shake the little home they had just begun to build. After all those years together, pushing through financial struggles, sleepless nights, preparing for the birth, and the moment he cried hearing Leo's very first cry, it all felt like proof. Proof that their love was solid. But then, a single offhand comment during a TV show stirred something deep inside him. "What if you're not the father?" Ivy had laughed when she said it. A smile that lingered too long, pitched a little too high, and carried something off. Alex tried to laugh back, brushing it off like just another dumb joke inspired by the trashy show on screen. But when he looked into her eyes, the innocence he used to know wasn't there. What he didn't realize at that moment was that her words would drag him into a long, blurry stretch of confusion and quiet torment. Since that night, Alex started noticing things he never used to. Ivy was practically glued to her phone, taking it everywhere, even into the bathroom. Whenever a message came in, she'd tilt the screen away or cup the phone in her hand, like she was afraid he'd catch a glimpse. During conversations, she often avoided eye contact or steered the topic elsewhere whenever he asked about her day-to-day routine. She also began snapping more easily, especially when he casually asked, "Who just texted you?" It was an innocent question, but Ivy reacted like he'd just accused her of something. "Are you trying to control me? Am I not allowed to have my own space?" Alex didn't want to suspect anything. He told himself she was probably just stressed from the baby, running on no sleep or dealing with hormone swings. But then, friends started saying things that he couldn't ignore. "Hey, the kid doesn't really look like you, huh? His eyes are blue, yours are brown, right? The kid's ears kind of look like someone else's, but not you. Probably just takes after his mom, right?" Those offhand throwaway comments felt like tiny needles pricking at Alex's chest. One morning, he carried Leo out to the balcony to get some fresh air. The sunlight hit just right, enough for Alex to study his son's face in full. That dark brown hair was already lightening to a golden shade. His blue eyes were startlingly bright. A tall nose, a small dimple in the chin. None of it looked like Alex. He walked back inside, stood in front of the mirror, compared features. Nothing matched. His heart clenched. And then, one late night, everything became a little too clear. Ivy was in the kitchen making a bottle. Her phone sat on the sofa. The screen lit up. A message popped up. "No name saved. You know the baby's not yours, right?" Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He hadn't even touched the phone when Ivy came running out, snatched it from the couch, and immediately deleted the message. Her face had gone pale, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "It's just a friend messing around. They joke like that all the time. Don't overthink it." "What kind of friend jokes like that? You think that's funny?" It was an old message. "I don't even remember," she said too quickly. The answer was far too weak to calm Alex's racing mind. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Ivy slept soundly beside him, but he felt like a stranger in his own family. Part of him still wanted to believe her, to think it was all just the irrational worry of a first-time dad. But another part, a part that kept growing louder, was whispering, "Something's not right." That offhand joke had suddenly become the starting point of every doubt. Alex no longer looked at his son with the same carefree love. Now he looked through him, searching for himself in the boy's eyes, in the curve of his ears, in the creases at the corners of his smile. But he found nothing. Day by day, Ivy grew more distant. She stopped sharing things like she used to. She barely let Alex care for Leo anymore. Every time the baby fussed, she rushed over and scooped him up with a quick, "He needs his mom." Alex was stuck in a gray zone between trust and suspicion. On one side, the woman he loved, on the other, the gnawing sense that he might be raising another man's child. He had no proof, just fragments. Tiny details that one by one began to link together like pieces of a dark puzzle. And in Alex's mind, a question started forming, clearer than ever. What if Leo isn't mine? In the days that followed Ivy's joke, the doubt inside Alex wasn't just a spark anymore. It had become a slow-burning fire, quietly consuming every thought he had. At first, he told himself he was just being sensitive, overthinking. But every time he looked at his son, he couldn't shake the thought, "This boy doesn't look like me." Those storm gray eyes, they didn't match Ivy's or his. The sharp chin, the delicate nose, the smile, there was nothing in that face that reflected him back. Some friends even joked, "You sure you're the dad?" They didn't mean any harm. But each comment, light as it sounded, felt like a blade twisting deeper into a fear that was already growing inside him. Alex began doing something that even he felt guilty about, quietly searching for proof. One evening, while Ivy went out to grab groceries, he slipped into the bathroom and carefully pulled a few strands of hair from Leo's brush, his son's hair. He added a few of his own and sealed both into a small Ziploc bag. He found a reputable DNA testing center, requested an anonymous test, and paid extra for expedited results. The 3 days of waiting felt like 3 sleepless nights. During the day, he tried to act like nothing was happening. He still smiled at Ivy, still changed Leo's diapers, still rocked him gently in his arms. He even heard himself saying the same words he always did, "Daddy loves you so much." But every time the words left his mouth, it felt like a needle in his chest. What if I'm lying? What if everything I've felt has been misplaced all along? He started secretly searching online in the middle of the night. Signs the baby might not be mine. What traits come from the father's DNA? Is it suspicious if the baby doesn't look like the dad? The more he read, the more chillingly accurate everything sounded. One article hit him hard. In early infancy, many babies resemble their fathers more. It's a natural bonding instinct. But Leo was the opposite. The older he got, the less he looked like Alex. Alex lived in constant contradiction. One part of him desperately wanted to believe Ivy. The other was bracing for the worst. In quiet moments, he'd just sit and watch Leo sleep. That tiny face used to be everything to him. But now, every expression, every little frown, became another question mark. On the fourth day, his phone buzzed with an email from the DNA testing center. He didn't open it right away. His hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He had to take several deep breaths before he could bring himself to tap the screen. In those few short seconds, a flood of memories from the past year rushed through his mind. Leo's first cry, the first diaper change, the sleepless nights rocking him to sleep, the happy family photos, the afternoons he juggled work and childcare just to give Ivy a break. And then the result appeared in bold. Probability of biological relationship %. His heart stopped. His eyes locked on those words, then blurred with tears. He didn't want to believe it. He read it again and again, hoping there had been a mistake, but there wasn't. Clear, final, undeniable. Leo wasn't his son. Alex collapsed, covering his face, sobbing like a child, not from rage, but from pure heartbreak. He remembered cutting Leo's umbilical cord, the overwhelming joy of hearing that first cry. And now he realized he had unknowingly been playing a part in a story he never agreed to. He whispered, "What am I in this boy's life? A stand-in? Someone she fooled?" The sobs came uncontrollably. In that moment, Alex felt like the ground beneath him had shattered. His whole world was collapsing. That night, the apartment was silent. Leo was fast asleep, his breathing soft and steady, a lullaby in the middle of a storm pulled tight with tension. Alex stood leaning against the bedroom door, gripping the folded DNA result in his hand. The numbers on that paper had been carved into his mind for 3 agonizing days. He walked over to Ivy Lane, the woman he once believed would be his wife, the mother of his child. She was sitting on the sofa, hair tied up in a loose bun, the warm light casting shadows across her face, making her look completely worn out. Alex sat down across from her, placed the folded sheet on the table, and gently slid it toward her. "You should read this." Ivy frowned, then opened the paper. It took only seconds for her eyes to land on the bold print. 0% probability of biological relationship. Her face drained of color like every drop of blood had just been pulled from her body. "Alex, it's true, isn't it?" His voice was raw, strained, but he held on to what calm he had left. "Leo's not my son." She swallowed hard. For a moment, Ivy looked like she was being crushed under the weight of 2 choices. Keep lying, or finally let every mask fall away? Yes. Just one word. One word, and everything came crashing down. Ivy lowered her head, her voice barely above a whisper, like a confession too heavy to carry. "It was a week before we got back together. I ran into someone from my past. We drank. We were stupid. I thought it was just a one-time thing, that it was over. But then I found out I was pregnant." "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" Alex's voice was sharp, like a blade honed by heartbreak. "You let me love that boy like he was my own. You let me believe I finally had a family." "I was scared," she said, eyes brimming with guilt. "I love you. I knew if I told you the truth, you'd leave. And I couldn't handle that." Alex shot to his feet, fists clenched tight at his sides. "So you let me live in a fantasy? Let me write my name on the birth certificate. Let me call that boy my son, while you whispered to yourself, he's not really his?" Ivy broke down, tears streaming down her face faster than she could wipe them away. "I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I loved you enough, if I took care of you enough, you'd never need to know." "Enough?" Alex let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "You just killed a part of me, Ivy. Not with a knife, but with a lie." From the bedroom, Leo's wail cut through the silence, sharp, sudden, heartbreaking. Ivy moved to get up, but Alex raised a hand, stopping her. "I'll go." He picked Leo up, gently rocking him back and forth. The baby nestled into his shoulder, trusting, innocent, still believing Alex was his entire world. Alex looked at him, and his heart twisted. Even knowing the truth, some part of him still loved this child. But his mind wouldn't allow it. His heart was breaking, but his principles stood firm. He laid Leo back down in the crib, then stepped out of the room, his face stone cold. Ivy was standing there, eyes swollen from crying, holding the engagement ring Alex had once given her. "Alex, don't do this. We can get through it. I swear, I've never loved anyone the way I love you. I messed up. But don't let that mistake destroy everything." He looked at the ring, then at her. "Ivy, I can't raise someone else's child without the truth, and I can't stay if the trust is already dead." He turned away and walked to the door, taking nothing but his wallet and his coat. Before leaving, he set the ring down on the table, right beside the DNA results. Alex's mother arrived the next morning. When Ivy opened the door, the older woman looked at her without a shred of emotion. "You lied to my son. You let him live in a fantasy for almost a year." "I'm sorry," Ivy murmured. "Don't apologize to me," she said flatly. "Ask your conscience." Alex's father came shortly after. He stood quietly for a moment before saying only one thing. "My son deserved honesty. Without that, love is just a cruel joke." The door closed behind them, leaving Ivy and Leo in a now chilled apartment. The home that once felt warm, once felt like a haven, now echoed with the final words of people who were walking away. And Alex? He stepped out of that house carrying a shattered heart. But this time, he knew the truth. What he was leaving behind wasn't a family. It was a dream, a stolen one, taken by someone he once believed was forever. After that night he walked out, Alex never went back. He rented a small room near his job, lived quietly, and didn't send a single message to Ivy Lane for 3 straight days. But inside him, silence wasn't possible. The hurt, the anger, the betrayal, it spun endlessly in his mind, and he knew there was only one way to bring clarity to this mess, the legal way. Alex met with a lawyer the following week. His voice was low, steady, but firm. "I want to revoke my paternity rights. I'm not the child's biological father." The lawyer nodded, not surprised. He explained that since the child was under a year old, the court could allow Alex's name to be removed from the birth certificate, especially with DNA evidence. However, he warned there was a chance Ivy Lane might contest it, or worse, demand continued child support, since Alex had already played the role of a father. But then came the surprise. Ivy Lane didn't fight it. At the preliminary hearing, Ivy showed up with her own lawyer. Her face was pale, bare of makeup, and her eyes looked exhausted. When the judge asked if she had any requests, she simply said, softly, "I don't want to force Alex to continue being Leo's father, but if possible, I'd like him to have visitation rights. The baby is used to calling him Dad. I don't want him to lose someone who once loved him so deeply." Alex stayed silent. He didn't look at Ivy Lane. He stared at the hardwood floor beneath his feet. He wasn't sure what he wanted anymore. Visitation? To come and go, to hold the boy, then walk away again? His heart couldn't take being torn open one more time. After nearly 2 hours of deliberation, the court made its decision. Alex's name would be removed from Leo's birth certificate. The man identified as the possible biological father must undergo a DNA test within 14 days. If confirmed, he would be legally responsible for child support under state law. The man, of course, was Travis, Ivy Lane's ex-boyfriend, the one she had secretly met. When he received the court summons, his reaction was immediate. He called Ivy, yelling through the phone, accusing her of dumping everything on him. Ivy later recounted it to Alex, her voice flat, almost hollow. He said he's sure the baby isn't his, but he'll do the test, just to be sure. The results came back faster than anyone expected. Travis was Leo's biological father. A court order for child support was issued a week later. Travis didn't show up for the hearing. All documents were handled through his lawyer. No apology, no sign of remorse, not a single word of ownership. As for Ivy Lane, that was when the real collapse began. There was no one left, no one to lean on, no one to hope for. Travis didn't love her child, and Alex had become a stranger. Each time Leo mumbled "Daddy" in his sleep, Ivy could only hold him tight and cry. Alex never visited Leo. He didn't reply to messages. He stopped opening old photos. On sleepless nights, he'd drive aimlessly through the old streets, the ones where he used to walk with Ivy, where they'd picked out Leo's crib, where he once pictured a future. Now they were just shadows and streetlights that didn't recognize him anymore. Then one day, Alex filed for a job transfer. An engineering office in the next city over accepted him immediately. When friends asked why, he simply smiled and said, "I need a fresh start. Everything here haunts me." In his final week before leaving, he gathered every last item from the apartment: the crib, the tiny onesies, the stuffed bear, the baby blankets, the ultrasound photos, even the snapshots of him and Leo, the ones that once meant the world. He packed them all into one big box, and then he walked out to the backyard and lit a small fire. Each onesie, each photo frame curled in the flames, the fire casting flickers across Alex's face, damp with sweat. There were no tears, only silence, as if he were burning the most beautiful part of his life with his own hands. Only one thing he couldn't let go: a single photo, Leo as a newborn, red and wrinkled, crying his lungs out, his tiny hand clutching Alex's finger. The photo was laminated, tucked deep inside an old leather notebook. No one saw it, no one knew, and it wasn't kept for anything. A month after leaving the city, Alex received an email. Sender, Ivy Lane. No exclamation marks. No emojis. Just a plain subject line, about Leo. He didn't plan to open it, but his hand moved on its own, the mouse clicking as if muscle memory hadn't died yet. "Alex," the message began. "He still says your name in his sleep. He doesn't understand what's happened, but he remembers you." Attached was a photo. Leo, grinning wide in a stroller, clutching the teddy bear Alex had bought the very first time they went shopping together. Beneath it, a short note. Simple. But it cut like a blade. "You'll always be the father in his heart." Alex stared at the screen. No tears, no smile, just silence. In that moment, memory rose like smoke from the part of his mind he'd tried so hard to lock away. Nights holding Leo to sleep. The first babbling sounds. That bright, uncontrollable laughter when Alex made silly monkey faces. And then, a question echoing in the hollow of his chest, still unanswered. If I wasn't the boy's father, then what was I? He didn't reply to the email. He didn't write back. He didn't delete it. He just quietly dragged it into a separate folder, labeled "Can't Forget." Not because he still loved Ivy, not because he couldn't let go of Leo, but because that email and everything that came before it was the biggest lesson of his life. A painful reminder etched deep. Trusting the wrong person can sometimes make you lose yourself. The new city didn't have many familiar faces. Alex rented an apartment on the 4th floor, overlooking a park where kids ran and laughed every evening. He started from scratch. New job, new coworkers, new coffee shop. Life became tidy, predictable, no more chaos, no more surprises, no more storms. But also, nothing that made his heart race anymore. He stopped talking about Leo, stopped telling old stories. When colleagues asked, "Do you have a family?" he just gave a faint smile and said, "Never did." Still, there were moments when he'd see a tiny onesie at the grocery store with "Daddy's Boy" printed across the chest, or when a child in the park shouted, "Daddy," with a voice so full of joy, his heart would skip. Just a little. It was hard to tell what it was. Memory? Grief? Or just a quiet part of him that hadn't died all the way. One evening, sitting on the balcony, sipping the bitter black coffee he'd grown used to since the day he walked away, Alex opened the email again. That photo of Leo still shining with innocence, eyes wide, unaware he was ever the center of a tragedy. A tragedy that began with one single sentence. A joke. Just one joke. One line that seemed harmless. A sentence dropped casually over dinner when laughter filled the room and the TV glowed in the background. "What if you're not the father?" And from that moment on, everything began to crack. A family, one that had barely begun to form, shattered before it ever stood a chance. Alex closed his laptop. He stood, staring out at the night cityscape. The wind blew, cool and sharp. Below, a child called out to his dad, chasing a toy car into the dark. Alex turned back toward the apartment. Not to run from the past, but simply to keep living. A single joke, if cruel enough, can destroy an entire family. In the end, Alex chose to move on, not because he was strong, but because he had no other choice. A family that once seemed to be forming fell apart from a single joke. But deeper than that, what truly destroyed them wasn't the joke itself. It was the lie behind the smile. It was one person choosing to bury the truth out of fear of losing the one they loved. Love needs truth. No matter how painful it is, the truth deserves to be spoken. before someone ends up paying for it with their entire future. So now we ask you, if it were you, would you forgive? Would you stay for the sake of an innocent child? Or would you walk away to hold on to your dignity? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe that honesty is the first foundation of real love, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Love Stories, where every story brings a heartbeat back to life. Love Stories, where broken hearts find their voice. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.